Hey Facebook friends, Marianne here. I want to reach out to all of you because I tried to do this when I was just over in London, and I guess I did it wrong because I didn't post. But the reason why I'm reaching out to everyone today is because I'm really deeply concerned. Most of you know who follow me on Facebook know how I feel about ICE and how it's terrorizing families. Many of you know I went down to McAllen to see for myself during Trump's first regime what was happening to the children that were being put in what was called then the ICE box and how it tore families apart. Many of you have seen the video that I posted of ICE coming onto the bus and asking only people who look like me for our passports. And many of you have heard me talk about some of the experiences I've had in encountering ICE myself and other places as well. This should not become the norm. It already is in way too many places around the country. Already those of us with my brown colored skin in the state of Texas have been dealing with papers, please laws. As you can see from my attire, I was dressed to go out exercising today in Chapultepec Park. We are about to do some awesome things here in Mexico. And one of the things I noticed, and I noticed this also when I was in London, I noticed when I was in France, I've noticed this when I've been in Japan or any other country, Italy. And you know what that is? I don't have to take my passport when I go for a walk. I don't have to think, oh, do I have my water bottle? Check. Do I have my the right shoes? Do I have my ball cap? Check. Oh, I also need my passport. The fact that that is a norm, that anyone that looks like me has to think that way for fear of being taken by ICE that pulls up and says, papers, please, that is a travesty on American democracy. That should not be the norm. And for all those of you who say, oh, but we want to get rid of the criminals, it's all about the criminals, it's worth you losing your freedom. It's worth you dealing with this so that we can get rid of criminals. There's a lot of hypocrisy there because it ends up being basically, if you go over and you see all where these, people, these criminals are being taken, it's often right there in the actual jury rooms where they are following our laws. And many times these are people that have had a track record of checking in, following the laws, applying, filling out the paperwork to become an American citizen. So the fact that ICE is camping right there right outside the jury rooms when these people who've been trying to be law-abiding citizens walk out tells you enough. Obviously, this is not about the law. Obviously, this is about race. Obviously, people don't feel comfortable about talking about that. But I want to say something about the current leader of the Dallas Police Department and for those of our city council who are taking a stand. Thank you. It is so important those of us who have brown skin, this type of melanin, are speaking out because we need to let them know. And so if you are a member of City Council, if you are a member of the Dallas Police Department, I want to say thank you. Thank you for not immediately jumping on board and saying we will sell out the civil rights and human rights of our brown citizens for the bargain price of $25 million. Because that's exactly what this offer is. If the city decides that they're going to collaborate with ICE, it is going to take the basic things that what most of us who are brown living in DFW have been dealing with and magnify them to an unbelievable level. I sit on the board of the Interfaith Center of New York, and we have an amazing woman who's the executive director, Reverend Chloe Breyer. She is the daughter of a man who used to be on the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Breyer. So she's a bit more aware of a lot of the activism than a lot of people are. And one of the main things that they talk about the way that people have been ostracized, the way that people are being put in facilities without water, the way water is being poured on the ground, they have to lick it up. These are things that I'm hearing from people that I know. This isn't hearsay. It's from a reverend who I really trust. And if she's seeing water on the ground and people are being made to lick it, and that is how they get their water, this is cruel to a level that the United States has not done really since slavery. We had the Japanese internment camps, and it should be very disturbing to everybody that ICE is reopening them to make it into an ICE facility. That should be very disturbing. And while Trump is currently building this big ballroom that's garish and unsightly and practically larger than the White House, and those of us that have been blessed, and I have, to be in the White House more than once, walking through the East Wing, knows what that place meant. But right now, we're even trying to ignore the fact that so much of that White House was built by slaves, and instead trying to deny that slavery was there. What was it that Trump said? Oh yes, he doesn't want exhibitions showing the bad side of slavery. You know, if I was to say any of these statements in the past, people would have said that's insane. It's insane, Marianne, that people would be jerking people off the street. It's insane, Marianne, that we'd be getting rid of our education system. It's insane, you know, Marianne, this wouldn't be happening. But it is happening. And it started happening during this last administration, and I talked about it. And those of you that came out with me to hear Viktor Orban, you know, chant and get the whole crowd going in uproar because they wanted to get rid of interracial marriage, and they said that was in order to get to the next step that had to be taken to get rid of, you know, of Loving versus Virginia was to first get rid of gay marriage. You know, the crowd cheered. They're happy about it. I think I saw maybe 6 interracial couples leave, but not until they realized what the goal was going to affect their lives. And that's where we have to get to, America. We cannot be in a situation where we only care about human rights if it's affecting us directly. And that's what people aren't recognizing, the slippery slope is. So maybe you don't have my brown skin, but this isn't only going to affect those that look like me. Right now, I have a friend of mine. He's a self-made multimillionaire, and he happens to have black skin. And he happened to be from Nigeria. And he's sitting who knows where, because ICE took him. Because when they first looked at him, they thought there's no way a black man could have such a nice car, and they took him. You know, and they won't give his passport to him, and his family can't do anything until he has his passport. You know, this is what's insane. This was a law-abiding citizen. This is not about obeying the law. This is about terrorizing minorities. You know, I was talking to Juan Mancias, who's in charge of the Comeaux tribe, Texas. They are the tribe that has lived in Texas longer than any other tribe. If there has ever been the definition of a Texan, it's the Comeaux tribe in Texas. They were here before the Spaniards. You know, they've been here forever. And he was talking to me about how ICE and the harassment is going on around where his people live, where they've lived for thousands of years. You know, if you look like me, as I'd like to joke with people, you have the Carlos Santana coloring like we do, you're mostly Native American. If you had the Ted Cruz coloring, you're pretty much descended from a conquistador. That doesn't say anything negative about, you know, Hispanics in general with one coloring or another. But I want to point out there's a lot of diversity as well within the Latin community. And Latino itself is not a race. Latino means that people came from Spain or from, you know, or from Portugal, basically Iberia. And they conquered. And wherever they conquered, they imposed their language. And that didn't change the DNA of who lives there. So if you're in Mexico, it's pretty much a nation of mostly Native Americans. And there's a reason why we look like our brothers and sisters who are in the United States and who are in Canada. So when you have ICE going over to the Navajo Nation and saying, ooh, these people look like people that shouldn't be Americans, we're going to take a bunch of Navajo because they look like they might be illegal immigrants. Well, there's a reason why we look like each other, because we're Native American. And that's the big thing that Trump and MAGA don't want to talk about. It's because the inconvenience about brown people existing is because we're the color of the people that originated on this land called North America, on Turtle Island. There's a reason why, you know, when people say to me, you know, go back where you came from, that I retort that my ancestors are building pyramids on this land long before their ancestors knew it existed. I don't think it gives me more of a claim to this land than somebody from, you know, from Europe. I really don't. Or for somebody who was descended from slaves, or somebody who came over and was forced to work the railroads like the Asian community. I don't think it makes me any more entitled to America. But it sure as heck shouldn't make me less entitled to being an American citizen when I actually was adopted correctly, had all my papers drawn, been here living my whole life, and to be stopped and singled out because of my race. And when I take a look at what's just happened in Chicago, where a man was fined $160 because when he was able to prove he was a citizen, they fined him for not having his papers. This is a turning point. We need to be paying attention. When I pay attention, you know, look at another woman, you know, Maria Greerly, like me, Native American genetics, She was adopted by an all-white family, and ICE took her and kept her for a very long time because they said she did not look like her last name. I'm a Thompson because of my adoption. I'm a Frank because of my marriage. I do not look genetically like I am descended from people with the last name Thompson or Frank. Is it right for someone like me who wants to just go exercising around the lake to have to make sure that I have my passport because of the way I look, since our Supreme Court ruled that somebody who has my skin coloring should be enough for ICE to stop them and suspect them of criminal behavior? Is the amount of melanin in my skin enough that I should be a suspect of criminal behavior? Now, that's a question that the African American community has been living with a long freaking time. And those of us who are involved in Black Lives Matter can vouch for the fact that that is something that they have been dealing for a long time. So that's not new. But what is new are the camps. What is new are people being put somewhere like the 86-year-old man that went to go get his, he apparently had his wallet robbed, so he was replacing everything, and he needed to replace his Social Security card. He made an appointment. He'd been living in the country since he was about 6 years old. He certainly had all the papers. He'd been a citizen for decades. But they didn't believe it. And his poor wife, who dropped him off and was supposed to pick him up 15 minutes later, comes back and they say, oh, he's not here. He hasn't been here. And it wasn't until months later that a relative was somewhere in Guatemala and heard of a man of that description and went there. And how that man, who was an American citizen and had never been in Guatemala his entire life, went to just to renew his Social Security card, was found emaciated and in emergency care in Guatemala. This is legal kidnapping, is what they're doing. It's pure and simple legal kidnapping. And what the Supreme Court has done has opened it so it's just free carte blanche. And if you think it's not going to affect you, take a look at the number of instances where you have masked men, because it's very easy to impersonate an ICE officer if you're a white man. You just have to wear your fatigues, go to a nearby military outlet, just pick those things up, and then put a bandana or black thing around the bottom part of your face and wear a baseball cap, and then say you're ICE, because they're not required to put any kind of ID out. And there have been instances where women have been raped because people said, I'm ICE, you have to come with me. And they take them somewhere and they rape them. There have been instances where, convenience stores have been robbed because people come in and say, I'm ICE, and I'm going to take you unless you give me this money. When we don't require warrants, we're going to allow so many imposters to pretend that they're ICE and to commit atrocious crimes. And then there's also when ICE does legitimately kidnap a child or takes a parent. A child comes home and their parents aren't there. A parent goes to pick up their child and the child isn't there. They report it to the police. The police start looking all over. Do we have someone who's kidnapping children left and right? Do we have an abduction? Do we have a woman who's been kidnapped by someone who's a rapist? What's going on? Because ICE is not required to report to the local police department when they've taken someone. So that's a lot of valuable and expensive resources that get wasted by our local police department. It should be going to the fact that there are legitimate kidnappings happen. So if we're taking a look at all this, and you think this isn't going to have to do with you, it will affect you. And it will affect people that you care about. And the city council right now, in making this decision, and with the public making its decision, and with the mayor making his decision, and with the leader of the Dallas Police Force making the decision, it is all coming back to one thing. Is the selling of human rights and civil rights the due process that makes us one nation indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, the very definition of what we are? Are we willing to sell out those values for a little bit of cash? Because 25 million is not going to affect things greatly. It's not. The things that are going to be affecting our lives greatly will be the money that is being denied to SNAP recipients. And I can say that as somebody that has an organization through the Mimsy Institute. We have Food Source DFW that became Food Source USA that has saved over $60 million worth of food from being thrown into landfills. And we work with all the area food banks, and we work with all the area, homeless shelters. I can tell you that the number of people that are going to be in need, it's already gone up, and it's only going to continue going up because of the end of SNAP funding. And now we're hearing people wanting to criminalize being homeless at the same time that laws are being passed that are going to make it more and more likely that people will find themselves struggling for food and the ability to pay a mortgage or rent. America, we're losing our compassion. But one thing gives me hope. When I see the leader of the police force, Mr. Comeaux, take a stand and said, "We're not doing this in my city." When I see the local Dallas City Council members say, "We are not doing this in our city." When I see the local people, marching and say, "We are not doing this in our city." What I'm hearing as a brown-skinned person is that people care about my human rights and civil rights. And when I see the little laugh emojis, what I see are people that do not give a damn about my human rights and civil rights. They think it's funny that I live in fear. And I didn't realize just how much it affects me until I was walking around in London, and I realized on the 5th day of walking around, my head was no longer swiveling. My heart was no longer beating fast. And I realized I didn't even have to keep my passport on me. And I realized that was a freedom I took for granted. And that's a freedom many of you are still taking for granted. And if you are a person of color, if you are a brown, Native American, African American, Asian American, if you're any of the color other than white, you need to be keeping your passport on you. And it's a travesty that I should be saying this. But people that think their money's going to keep them safe are in for a reality check, because it's not going to keep you safe at all. My multimillionaire friend discovered that. All that mattered was that he wasn't white. He had an accent. And they just didn't want to believe him. So they took the passport that proved that he was an American citizen, and they kept it from him while he's sitting there at a camp. This is the America that we're looking at. And when Trump has, during his first regime, spent $45 million per individual new camp, adding as well as a $75 million facility in Texas alone. And then we hear about acres and acres and acres of land that our governor is more than happy to supply for yet more holding camps. This is coming from a people that don't see brown people as human. They don't see people who are Asian, African American, Native American as human. And if they advocate, and I will come out saying this, if you advocate for taking that $25 million that ICE is offering for our police department to become an extension of ICE, not only are you getting rid of the ability for our police department to make informed decisions about whether something is a real kidnapping, a child truly needs to be on the alert. We all, those alerts you get on your phone, we need an Amber Alert. Or was it ICE? A woman has been yanked into a car. Is it a serial rapist? Or was it ICE? People with machine guns are suddenly coming into a house. Do you pull out your gun? A lot of people in the state of Texas have their guns to protect yourself. Oops, was it ICE? We're looking at a nightmare scenario. Is that worth $25 million? And is it worth $25 million to sell out the human rights, civil rights, and overall well-being and safety of entire demographics of people just because they have melanin in their skin? That's the question we need to be asking now. Thank you.